Hello, welcome everyone on my talk, Blazing Accessibility Basics, here at Scottish Summit. Welcome all for coming to this talk. That means that you have interested in accessibility and or in Blazor and or in me. So at least one of those, and it's good. I hope you have at least interest in accessibility and in Blazor. I'm very happy to speak here today. First of all, I want to thank the sponsor of this event. Is due to the sponsors like Microsoft, Proximo 3, PwC, IAS, H2O, HSO, Docs 42, that such big events can happen and that such events can be for free for the audience, that we can reach more people using technology and even using technology for the better. Also, I want to thank all the other sponsors. I'm not going to read them right now. I don't read them right out in this slide. But let's start with introducing what the session is about, what's the agenda, and who I am, and why am I coming talking about this stuff today. So, the intro is here. I'm going to talk about what is accessibility and inclusion, and why should you build for accessibility and inclusion. One of the accessibility principles are the core principles, and this comes from perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And of course, after explaining the accessibility and the core principles, I'm going to show you how to implement them, all of those, in a Blazor application. And then it's time to wrap up this talk and time for questions and answers. And thank you for being here. So I'm Dennie Declercq, and I'm president and founder of the Disabilities, a non-profit in Belgium. And we really connect the IT industry and the social industry. So how we do it, we do IT consultancy and IT expertise for the social industry, and social expertise like co-workers on the autism spectrum or implementing accessibility for IT companies who are not doing it right now, helping them so for the IT industry. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I'm really, really proud of this. I also call myself Mr. Dreaming is Believing. It's the first time in that conference, so it's surprised that I really say Mr. Dreaming is Believing. I always say inventor of the hashtag Dreaming is Believing. Right now, we removed that it's Mr. Dreaming is Believing. I have a blog, I have Twitter, and I forgot to add my LinkedIn and my GitHub, but once you find me on Twitter, you'll find all the rest. So what is accessibility and inclusion? First of all, so what is accessibility? And accessibility is people with all needs, and these are the normal needs and the special needs, can access the internet, can access daily life activities, in fact, can access all areas. And even during the pandemic, it became more and more important that people realize that if sometimes they are not accessible, if the IT solutions, like the apps or the internet or the web apps, it's all part of the internet, is not accessible, people can get excluded from daily life even more than 5 years ago or 3 years ago. Give you an example, if there is a government website allowing in a country what's allowed or not allowed due to COVID restrictions, if you are not able to watch the website due to a disability, or if there is an app needed or a web app showing you a certificate, is it testing or vaccination, or does it matter, but you can't use that app due to a disability, how can you access that physical place? So it's really sometimes frustrating seeing I'm doing my pledge for accessibility since 2017, and the digital world wasn't accessible for people with disabilities. It became better until 2019, the start of 2020, people got to realize the importance. And then COVID came. And accessibility wasn't the most important thing, unfortunately. I even saw websites from governments who were really inaccessible. And then you're saying, I don't understand that. And if I talk about accessibility and inclusion, and especially if I talk about at the Microsoft Technology Conference, or using Microsoft technology like Blazor, I want to touch on Microsoft Inclusive Design. And I really have a whole document, even several documents that you can go to the URI, https Microsoft/design/inclusive. And they are really saying the following. Inclusive design is a methodology born out of digital environments that enables on the full range of human diversity. Most importantly, this means including and learning from people with a range of perspectives. And following the Microsoft Inclusive Guidelines, you should recognize exclusion, solve for one, extend to many, and learn from diversity. And I really love how they're working with the persona spectrum. So the next slide, I tell a bit about the persona spectrum. And they are using 4 categories: touch, see, hear, and speak. And then you have permanent, temporary, and situational. For example, seeing, you can be a blind person, or you can be an older person suffering cataract, or even not old. You can have laryngitis, or you can be completely non-verbal. I want to add to that category, so that is the official category. If I should make that table or this guideline myself, I should also add intellectual or cognitive. There are people who are a very hard time suffering depression or anxiety and are completely blocked. And there are people having a learning disability. For example, with the IQ below the 90. But that people also need to participate or need to be able to participate in life. Because Blazor is about websites or web apps, I really need also to include the WCAG, and these are the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And that is developed through the W3C process, that is the Web Accessibility Initiative Y. In cooperation with individuals, organizations around the world, with the goal of providing a single shared standard for web content accessibility that meets the needs of individuals, organizations, and governments internationally. And they are working with the POUR principles that you will see later on this talk. So, we had the Microsoft Inclusive Design Guidelines, we have the WCAG. If you comply to the Microsoft Inclusive Design Guidelines, you know most of the time you also already comply to the WCAG, and if you really check you comply for both, yeah, then you are doing great work. But if you make accessible apps or accessible web apps, another thing what's really important is test those apps. And Microsoft really has great tools. These are the Microsoft Accessibility Guidelines. You can plug it into Edge, you can do it into Chrome, and there's even a whole system to do it in your CI/CD system, so continuous integration and continuous deployment, like Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions. And let's give a demo about the Microsoft Accessibility Insights. So this is a talk with a lot of demos. I don't always know, do I need to add for a demo label beginner or label intermediate or advanced? Most of the time I do beginner if the code really is not complex. And I'm a developer, I want to play with code. And if I go to talk about code, I want to see code. So, and then people are saying, the demos is level intermediate, but it's really simple things I'm going to show. There will no rocket science here. There will all be some very basic concepts. So, and the first trick that I'm going to do, I have 2 versions of Microsoft Edge. I'm just going to copy fastly this URI and copy this just to my other Edge with all my extensions installed. I'm going to paste this. So it's a local host. That's the version of Edge with all my extensions. And here we have the Microsoft. Could you see it? Oh my God. Why aren't you saying this? Okay, good. Okay. Okay, you see it. So it's already the right version of Edge. And here you have the plugin Accessibility Insights. I just click this. And we are going to do a fast pass. And of course, you see 0 failed instances because I built it already accessible, the application. It's also, I'm going to show working code. It's not that we're going to make an accessible site from an inaccessible site. That should be very intermediate, by example. I click on talks. Oh, no talks found. But I have no connection anymore. Great. I just run it again. There. No stress. I think accidentally I pressed stop running. The switching screens, yeah, and then of course it's not working. Okay, it's running again. Doing this here. Okay. I Control V. Stop. It's loading. And I go into talks. And I have talks. And here the talks page, I'm doing again accessibility checking. Fast pass. It works, but now I'm going to show you how to debug the tab stops. Later in this talk, we're going to talk about tabs and so, and you will see that you can also test this with the Microsoft Accessibility Insights for Web. So I clicked on tab stops, and now I press Visual Helper. I toggle this on. Then you see here the little circle, and now we can start to tap. So one, we have the website next, next. Here, Scottish Summit, and we go press enter. If we want to test this again, we need to start this again up, but at this time we are not going to start it again. We are going to the next topic because it's only a 50-minute talk. And that was about testing for accessibility. Really important if you start building accessible apps that you can really test if they are really accessible, of course. So, let's continue right now on the 4 principles coming from the WCAG. And that means that the website should be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And let's specify those. Perceivable. Can everyone access the content on the website? Operable. Can everyone operate the website? Understandable. Can everyone understand the content on the website? Robust. Is your website robust? Is everything working well and fluid? And I don't know about you, but are there here non-native English speakers like me? I know there are, but they are on their device. I don't know if it's also for the other non-native English speakers, but for me, the difference between perceivable and understandable is really vague, honestly. So, by perceivable means that everyone can access the content on the website with different tools. Understandable means that everyone should be able to understand the content, so it's not the same. So, we start with the first one. How do we implement perceivable Blazor apps? First of all, again, a question for the audience. Has every one of you already played with Blazor? Some of you. I see heads. Okay. Is it okay for the other one that you just follow on accessibility? I don't have time to do a real extended talk into Blazor, but there are a lot of conferences, also recorded talks about Blazor. But the basic Blazor is the Microsoft front-end technology for web application that you don't need JavaScript for people who don't like JavaScript. So start with perceivable, and that means one of the first specifications in the WCAG is text alternatives for non-text. And if you make Blazor applications, you need 2 types of code. Simply say it. You have more than 2, but 2 important ones. You have your HTML and everything that belongs to it, for example, CSS. And you have your Blazor. That is most of the time your Blazor syntax. And that is a combination between C# and HTML, or F# and HTML, I don't know, between .NET and HTML. And some things you really need to do just in the HTML, and some things you really need to do in your C#, in your Blazor, in your model. So I did a separation. But if you make a Blazor application, everything comes to one application together, they melt it in each other. So in HTML, you need to provide alt text for images. Alt text are really important to perceive the text, for example, for people with screen readers. Otherwise, they only see an image. The screen reader said image, for example, image 123.jpg. What is the person doing with that? But of course, if you're Blazor, so for web applications, it's all about working with data and with data in a model. So to provide a great alternative text, alt text, maybe you should include the alt description in your model. For example, if you have a model with a lot of pictures, yeah, then the description should be in the model sometimes or most of the time. Content can be presented in different ways. Simple, use the right and the modern HTML5 standards. And use a modern UI framework that can be Bootstrap, that can be Tailwind CSS, but the modern ones. If you start a new Blazor application in .NET, it's Bootstrap, but you can change it. You can change everything in .NET. Fonts and clear fonts. Be sure that the text is big enough for people. Really something simple to say, but not for everyone simple. Use the standards. How many of you are doing consultancy and having customer asking quite of a special font made by a special designer, and it's not accessible. It's not working everywhere and not on each device, and especially not for the accessibility tools. Tell them, learn them to use the variety of standard chat fonts. It's so much better than spending all the money on a specific font that doesn't work for everyone. So sometimes really making accessibility is not difficult. Sometimes there are some more difficult things to keep in mind, but most of the time it's just really simple. Use the standards. Not that difficult, but really important. Color is not the only way for conveying information. For example, if I use error messages, I always use an asterisk for each item. It's also important that you show an exclamation mark in its danger, not only coloring something red, because if you have a color disability, if you have a deficiency on the color seeing spectrum, I learned it. I used the term color blindness, but I learned yesterday that you shouldn't say that. You should say a deficiency on the color seeing spectrum. Yeah, but then maybe you cannot see. But if there is an exclamation mark and an asterisk, there's already more chance that you see it. And use simple words as delete, confirm. Don't use only a red or a green button. What does it mean if you are colorblind? If you have a disability on the color spectrum deficiency. Because the red-green difficulty is one of the most of the people on that spectrum. So if you really follow the WCAG standard, your website should be resizable up to 400%. But you will see later in the demo, if you scroll into your Blazor application up to, it starts at 300%, the menu becomes invisible. You can, at least in Bootstrap. I didn't do it in Tailwind CSS, but I'm not a designer. I do research on accessibility, but I really want it as simple, stupid possible. So what you're doing, you can develop the whole new menu, but that's difficult work. Changing Bootstrap components, especially if you want to build something quick, simple, idea is adding also a food navigation. Then at least if the top menu is not visible, yeah, you have the food navigation. Also works. Here we add a lot of value for people who are, for example, having difficulties with seeing without doing a lot of development. Maybe nothing, nearly nothing. Images are resizable. Use bigger images than your CSS layout. What I mean? You need to add in your website, you want to add an images of, for example, 200 times 150 pixels. Don't upload 300 times 150 that you want to show. Do it triple. 900 times 450. But show it during with your CSS code to 300 times 150. If you do that, Then, if people resize, it will have quality, enough quality, the quality that is needed. And it's demo time. Also, always nice. So, I'm going to spin up my application in this Resizable. And I'm going to show a few things, of course. I start with, I'm not going to talk about the whole structure of the application. I'm going to show you my model, by example. In my models, you have a talk. Just a simple model. And here you see, I have the picture. It's URI, so the picture is just on a Azure storage. But you also have, so the picture of the first slide is the first slide URI. But you also have your first slide alt. Then, if you show the picture as you saw, you can add also the alt in that. Really important. What I also want to show is in your application. So we have here our, I need to go to the shared folder. So here we have the shared, the shared. In my shared folder, I have the food nav. It's just a component with the same menu as in the top menu, with a bit different view. And then in my main layout, I added also that food nav. That's really important here. I'm going to spin the application up again. And we're going to scroll up more than 300%, so we need to scroll up until 400%. You see it, okay? I do Control plus, 120, 130, 100. Damn, it's gone. No worries. We are going to scroll down, and we are able to use the menu, the footing menu. So here, I go to scroll. If I'm going to inspect this, you will see that I have an alternative text. You saw in the model I have place for the alternative text. How did I see it? How did I implement it into the solution? This is a component, this is a talk component. So we are loading a list of talks in the model. So here we have the talk. It's a talk list item because it's a list of talks. Then we have the talk list item. And here we are so escaping. If you put the add in Blazor, you are escaping the HTML syntax, and you're going to talk to your model, to your C# model. So in the source of the image here, we have our talk.firstSlide URI, and we are adding the alt first slide. It's not always needed to do that. It's always needed to have alt text, but you don't always need it in the model. I give you an example. We're going back to here by now. And we have here the event. For example, here we have Blazing Accessibility Basics in Scotland. So I'm going to touch here. Again, there is an alternative text. Here is the alternative text. But I added in the alternative text Scottish Summit's logo. So what they did, and the event, so Scottish Summit is an event. And the event, I add the logo URI, but I didn't add the logo URI alt. What did I did here in my event component? In my components, talk list event item. I'm just saying source event.logo URI. So with the add, so we are going to the model, escaping the HTML. And with the alt, we are going to the model, escaping the HTML, and event.name, we go back to the HTML just with the space, you go back to it, and then you add, here I had apostrophe logo. It's the same alt, and for that it's more than enough. So that's what I showed here. So let's say our apps are at this time perceivable. They also need to be operable, as I said. How do I do this? Functionality is available from a keyboard. So I already saw that we tested it with accessibility inside. But to develop it, it's very important that you have a good structure, so that you structure your document, your HTML pages, with the use of headings. And be aware of a good structure. In Blazor, if you work with forms, and we're going to show also a form, I didn't show the form yet because I want to have surprises also in the demo. But if you want to work with a form, you use the edit form and the / edit form for your forms. And also be aware of the component, otherwise add the component, add the order in a tab order code. Users should have enough time to read and use the content. Avoid timers. Sometimes you can't avoid timers. By example, I'm a big fan of Rammstein. Don't mind what your music genre is. But if I want to buy a ticket for Rammstein and they're coming to Ostend in August, and I live close to Ostend, yeah. But they need the timers there because there are a lot of people wanting their tickets. And if I just start up my computer, log in into the website, and let my computer the whole day on, then I block everything. So that's the reason that you put a timer. Same for airlines. But so sometimes it's really needed, yeah, then it's needed. But just provide a button to extend the time, or even better, measure if the customer or the client who are working with application is still moving his mouse, is still working on the keyboard, is still on the website, then automatically extend. Also very important. Content does not cause seizures and physical reactions. For example, people on the epilepsy spectrum can have damages with strobe light and light effects. And even people with anxiety, so mental health spectrum, can have more anxiety if content, for example, is moving too fast. Or with written, 1, 2, 3, no chance, you're going to miss the deal. If you have flashy content, turn it off by default. And provide a warning sentence before turning it on. And sometimes it's needed to have it and turn it on. For example, let's imagine you are building a website for a customer who has a discotheque. They don't want a business-looking website. They want something more catchy. But then be aware of what it can do. Users can easily navigate, find content, and determine where they are. It's a really easy thing here. HTML, just a good HTML5 usage and using breadcrumbs. Not that difficult. User can use different input modalities beyond the keyboard. Again, not that difficult. The web and the additional tools. By additional tools, I mean screen readers or ease of access in Windows who are already built upon that. That's the most thing for you. If you are working with HTML5, the latest HTML5, I can imagine that the existing tools and the web are not doing it even good or are not doing it good anymore with really deprecated HTML versions of your website, so really important. Demo time. We are going to the comments right now. Here are some comments, and please leave a comment. I'm going to add my own. So here you see error messages. They are showing here with the asterisk. So you see it's not only the red color, and even at top I have the summary of the error messages. Dennie. And I say, and I going to add a comment. And I'm going to use my dad, just for fun, with my own email address. Oh, yeah. I don't think he minds. We have a good relation. And then I'm just going to add comment. It will not work again. But maybe I'm saying I shouldn't answer in the place of my dad. So I just put cancel, the form is cleared. But I know he is proud. So here we have the comment is just a C# file. If you work with C#, you can add the error messages in your model with the component model, the data annotations. So you can add the right error messages, and I always advise to use an asterisk. Some people say it's not needed. I find it more accessible. And then we have in our components. Components, we have a comment form. In the comment form, we add our validation messages. And we do everything with the edit form, as I said. So, and my comment page consists of the comment list. By just showing a comment list item the same way of my talks for each comment. And the comment list item is just simply calling is a comment empty, show no comments yet. And otherwise, again, just call the C# class. And then on our comments page, comments.razor, I just have a simple division, so a grid and a division, so 2 columns. With a corresponding file, height and arg, showing the comments list and the comments form. And then a little bit of C#, gluing all the things together. It's also really important, as I said, to be aware of the right heading order. If you start a Blazor application standard, it always uses for the heading H2 or H3 if you start a new component. So here we have Blazor app 1. We have just index.0 with the H1 hello world, and then we have stuff, because we are doing stuff here, and this is our stuff component, so stuff.razor. And it's always H3 if you start the component. So if I add a new component here, add components, add component, just do it more. So Blazor component, more, too much stuff here. You will see H3, but who knows that it's H3? Because if you run it right now, the top order, the heading order will not work anymore. Because on page 1 we have H1 with the page title, and then we have the stuff component with H3. Where is H2? So these are things that you really need to be in mind. Also, not really complex, but you need to be aware of it. If you add component without all about your headings, try to get the headings right. But it's more important than you think, especially for people with screen readers. Wrong headings is not okay. So here we have, you will see H1 Hello World and the H3 with some stuff. If we go to inspect this, H1, H3. So always be aware of that and just know that its new component is always adding H3 for no reason. I am working on other solution to demo this stuff, and from that solution that I'm going to show here, you will see how I worked on the, let's say, the menu, the heading order. So what I did here is I started making enough, a heading component, and that will potentially be one of the first really project that I'm going to publish on GitHub to use by the whole community, everyone in Blazor components. So what we have here, the whole application at this time doesn't matter. It's a bit of the same, but in Dutch, really for neighbors where I live with. I live with neighbors together with neighbors with some disabilities. And what I do here right now is, I have my heading component, that is heading.basic. And here I can switch between, with just some C# syntax, defining which heading I want or I need. And then in my page, by example here, talk list, I can use my heading time for my talk heading and my title heading. So here I have my heading of the list of talks, that is my title heading, I pass it through. And for each talk, I use my talk heading. And then if you see it right here in my whole page, by example, pages talks, pages future talks, for example, back to the future. So my page is future, my talk list as it is my title with here in that C#. My title heading is definitely clear H1, my title of my talk list, and then I have my talk heading is H2. So for me as a developer, if I look at the code, in developing mode, I already see my headings are okay. My headings are perfect, and I don't need to click into 3 components with subcomponents. I already see here the overview, the headings are okay. So hear me, you help yourself and you help others that you are sure that it is doing the right thing, that it is using the right headings. So our apps are perceivable, or apps are understandable. Operable, I mean. And now our apps also should be understandable, how we are doing this. That's one of the most easiest slides. So if I look and take off my talk, it's not a lot of time anymore, but now it are simple concepts. The text is readable and understandable. Use easy jargon. Use easy language. Try to avoid jargon is not needed. Try to avoid jargon as much as possible. Be descriptive in your error messages. So important. People don't want to see error 404 dralala. There's something internal operation error. And users don't know what it is. Content appears and operates in predictable ways. Make a good usage of HTML5 headings. Again, and be aware of the wrong headings in the standard Blazor components, as I showed you the demo before. Users are helped to avoid incorrect error messages. Correct mistakes, sorry. Oh my God. So here again, it's in my forums. Again, make a good use of HTML standards, HTML5 standards, and be aware of the standard components and just do everything right in your forums. With your edit form, with your error messages in your form, with your error messages in your model. But also here, if you really, as a developer, know that you are structuring the website in a good way, that is also good for the end user. Understandable. I showed already all these things. I am too fast. Robust. The content is compatible with the current and future users' tools. Here is a paradox. Do you like paradoxes? Tech has a lot of paradoxes and accessibility too. You need to update often, but you shouldn't update your application too often. If you update too often, users are very confused, especially if in updates there are UI updates or different way you find it a better way to present. But if you not update often enough, then you are even not good on the security standards anymore. So choose your battles. It is a tech paradox. So no demo anymore. I only have 5 minutes and I want to have some Q&A. So you saw how we built poor web applications on the WCAG standards. You saw we started with the Microsoft Inclusive Design Lines. We started telling why you should make accessible apps, where you can base. I showed the links. I'm going to show you the slides afterwards. Then you have the links. And then we implemented these principles in our Blazor application. Thank you. Are there some questions? I try to provide some answers.
Somebody said earlier that Power Pages wasn't fully accessible. Is that right or wrong? I don't know.
Let's say I am here at Scottish Summit. There are developers using developer technologies, and there are people who are really doing the Power stuff. I'm not doing the Power stuff. I'm really building everything with code. I never played with the Power stuff. For me, that's the other silo of the tech stack. So. Other questions? Then I want to thank the sponsors again, and I want to thank you for coming to this talk.